With lots of countries and regions lifting restrictions now, there are more people moving, people are going back into the workplace, schools are reopening, and lots of people are obviously quite anxious about their health and how to keep themselves healthy. So this video is going to give you some tips and some ideas to help keep you safe and healthy throughout the course of the pandemic. So the first thing that I think is probably really important to highlight is that there is lots of emerging research at the moment looking at the relationship between vitamin D and COVID-19. It's no secret that vitamin D improves your immune response to general infections, whether that's bacteria, viruses, or otherwise. And vitamin D has been shown to improve a person's immune response to multiple pathogens. Work is ongoing at the moment with emerging studies showing that actually there is a relationship between COVID-19 and vitamin D as well. So the first thing I would recommend is that you ensure that you take your adequate levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D is known to enhance the function of your immune cells, including your T cells, macrophages, and other cells that protect your body against foreign invaders, like viruses and bacteria. Vitamin D is really important, and they have actually done lots of studies that have shown that those who have low vitamin D levels are more susceptible to infections and to illness. So by taking supplements and ensuring that you try and get extra walks in the sunshine or taking advantage of short pockets of the day when it is sunny, then you will be able to increase your vitamin D. Now you can get vitamin D from supplements and from sunshine. So the sunlight on your skin is probably the most effective way to get vitamin D. But those of us that live in colder countries and those of us who do not get a chance to go outside as much don't get as much vitamin D. So you can also take a supplement. And it is widely known that a huge proportion of the population have insufficient vitamin D. So taking vitamin D as a supplement, check with your primary care provider what is the right level for you. Most public health bodies, like here in the UK, they give a recommended daily allowance and a recommended dosage, so do check with your own country's public health recommendation. Other ways to naturally boost your immune system are ensuring that you get enough sleep and making sure that you do some exercise. And if you can eat a healthy diet alongside that, then you are pretty much onto a gold standard winner. It has been shown in the academic research that those who get adequate sleep are much less susceptible to infection and illness. So sleep, exercise, and vitamin D are three lifestyle ways that you can improve your health and also prevent your susceptibility to pathogens. So let's look at a few of the practical things that we can do, as well as trying to ensure that we ourselves stay as healthy as possible through lifestyle choices. We can also do multiple things to help to reduce our risk of exposure during a pandemic. So a few quick practical things. Let's start with travelling in public. If you need to use public transport, it should ideally be your last resort. If it's possible to walk or to cycle somewhere first, then choose those options. If you do need to take public transport, then do take a face covering. So let's talk about face coverings for a moment. Face coverings are important and masks are important. Now there's two ways to think about masks and face coverings. A mask to protect yourself would need to be a filtered mask or some kind of respirator like an N95 or an N100. So filtered masks can stop particles being inhaled, but they need to be well fitted and you need to be able to handle them properly. So if you're wearing a filtered mask, you should also wear gloves and be very aware of touching it. I've said this in previous videos, but always imagine that the outside of the mask is covered in black hair dye and you really don't want to be touching that anywhere because that could be where virus particles have settled. So if you're removing it, remove it from the ears, fold it in half, put it into a carrier bag or a nappy bag or some kind of disposable bag. And if it's a disposable mask, then dispose of it responsibly. Or if it's a reusable one, then pop it into a bag until you're able to pop it into the washing machine. The other reason for wearing masks is to protect other people. So face coverings don't protect you from inhaling the virus, but they can protect other people. So if everybody wore one, I would protect you, you would protect me. And the reason it works is because if a person breathes, speaks, coughs, it disrupts the transmission of the viral particles from one person's airways into getting into another person's airways, or the space in which they could inhale those droplets. So it's those droplets that are infectious. So it's important that if a person can reduce the distance that those particles can spread, then we are less likely to infect other people in our environment. And now you might say, well, I'm not infected, so why do I need to wear one? Well, a big part of this is that a lot of people can be asymptomatic, which means that they can potentially have the virus, have no symptoms, not know that they have it, but still be infectious and spreading it to other people. Similarly, you can be pre-symptomatic, which means that you can show no symptoms the 2 days before you start to show actual symptoms, like a dry cough or a fever. Those 2 days leading up to that, you can be totally fine and you can still be shedding viral particles. So you could also be spreading the virus whilst in a pre-symptomatic phase. So therefore, if everybody wears a face covering, then you're able to catch those droplets to stop the transmission and stop those droplets being propelled forward into somebody else's breathing space. Other practical tips include obvious ones. So let's just tick off some obvious ones. Constantly wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Wear gloves if you can wear gloves. Carry hand sanitizer if possible. Make sure that you try not to touch any kind of communal door handles where possible. Instead of touching lift buttons with your fingers, try and touch lift buttons with elbows or wrists whilst they're covered. Other practical tips would be things like avoiding peak times if at all possible. If you do need to return into the workplace, perhaps you could have a discussion with your employer about staggering work times so that you don't have to encounter large numbers of people at the same time every day. If it's possible to do some form of remote working, then obviously that would be most preferable. But if you do have to go in, then maybe ask about flexible working so that you can avoid busy times. Avoid congregating around certain areas like the entrance to train stations or anything like that. Anywhere where there's a crowd of people, try your best to avoid that wherever possible. Do be aware of things like taxis. There have been multiple studies now where people have caught COVID-19 from taxis. There was a paper published in The Lancet back in February looking at a Thai taxi driver who caught the coronavirus from a person who he was transporting to the airport. Be aware of touching high frequency areas, so things like door handles, lift buttons, light switches. Just be aware of areas that are going to be touched by lots of people throughout the day, especially if you're back in work now and you're using a shared office space. Just be really aware of these, and if you do have to touch any of these door handles, if you do need to go into the kitchen or anything like that, then make sure you always wash your hands after touching things. Try not to share mugs or pots, spoons, anything like that in the office. If you can eat alone, try and eat alone if possible. If you can be in a well-ventilated space, try and have as many windows and doors open as you can. Try and sit as far away from people as is physically possible in your designated space. Definitely don't eat or drink anything on public transport. If it's possible and you are in a crowded space, then maybe you could look at ways of reducing exposure by not facing people. If it's possible to face windows or walls or face away from other people, then you're not in somebody's direct line if they do expel any potential virus particles. Always try and use contactless payments wherever possible so that you don't have to use that money exchange, or you don't have to pick up additional notes or coins that may well still have viral particles on the surface. If it's possible, then obviously keep disinfecting your homes, your surfaces, your workplaces, your workstations. If you do need to take any bags out into the day, like a work bag, a school bag, a handbag, then always give that handbag a disinfect or a wipe. Don't take anything additional into any public toilets like bags or coats if you can help it. Try and touch as little surfaces as possible, and always make sure that you can wash your hands, or if you carry some kind of gel and alcohol gel or if you could wear PPE, even better. But don't forget that you must handle your PPE very carefully and take your gloves off, like pulling your fingers out and turning the glove inside out as you pull it out in order to keep any virus particles on the surface trapped. When you're in public spaces, try and keep distance. Always try and keep at least 2 meters of distance. If you encounter a person who is exercising whilst you are out in a public space, do try and make more distance between the 2 meters, just because a person who is exercising, if they had the virus, they would be able to project that virus much further due to the heavier breathing. If you see somebody who is exercising, just give them some extra space, more than the 2 meters. Other practical things to think about are day-to-day tasks and day-to-day things that we do. So let's talk about shopping. Food shopping is obviously a super practical thing. We need to do it, needs to get done. How can we make it safer? So if you physically have to go into the shop, you could wear your mask, you go in really quickly, you have your list already prepared so you don't waste time thinking, right, I'm in the shop, what do I actually need now? You've got your list, only touch the things that you actually want to buy and then pop those into your basket. Don't touch things, look at things, feel the products and then put them back, because that's just a way of adding additional exposure to your experience. Only go into the store alone if possible. Try and leave everybody else in your household at home, especially children, because it's really hard to teach them to not touch things and then you've got to worry about who they're talking to or what they're touching. So try and go into the store alone. Try to follow all the in-store guidance. Take a card so that you can use card payments so you don't have to exchange money with anybody. Take your own bag so you don't have to take bags from a supermarket that could be exposed, because a big part of this is that virus particles can settle on surfaces, and multiple studies have shown that SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, can live on surfaces for 2 to 3 days. Stainless steel and plastic anyway, copper is 4 hours. So it's worth being aware that these viruses can live on surfaces. So it's really important that if you are in a supermarket that you are considering this and you are taking those precautions. If you get your shopping delivered, which would be preferable, then you can catch my video about how to get your online shopping delivered safely, but briefly disinfect the things that you need immediately. You can leave shopping in carrier bags until you need it for 3 days to make sure that the viruses have all died. If you can leave it in a space in your house that won't be disturbed, so if you've got a bit of extra space under your stairs or in your garage or in a utility room somewhere, if you don't have that extra space, then make sure you disinfect it with some kind of disinfecting wipe or hot soapy water. Same for all of the products that come in on your online shop. Just give them all a wash, pop them in the fridge or wherever they're going, but ensure that you've given them a clean first. And finally, I would just say the final point that I would make in terms of practical tips would be to consider your own risk. So although there may be national directives, I think something that's been quite evident in this pandemic to date is that it is a very standard one-size-fits-all kind of message, and that might not always work for the nuances of every single family in the country. So I would definitely advise or recommend that you take any big decisions into your own personal risk assessment for your family. So check out my video that I did about the hierarchy of risk, and do see if there's a full in-depth analysis of how to create a risk formula for your family. But in a nutshell, again, if you basically assess where you can reduce your own risks, try and address different situations and scenarios in a way that will work most effectively for your family, and try and assess the risks for each individual event. But thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found those tips useful. Please do subscribe. This channel is all about ways in which we can protect and improve our health, and I share practical videos on improving health, lifestyle videos on living a healthy life, and educational videos to help us stay informed throughout this pandemic. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.